Hello, and welcome back to Book Talk with Kara. And today I am so delighted to get to introduce you to my friend, Shelley Shephard Gray. And she writes so many different kinds of books that I think you're going to really enjoy this opportunity to get to meet her and learn more about her books and her writing and just her life in general. But Shelley, do you want to take just a moment to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I like Carrie said, I'm Shelley Shepherd Gray, and gosh, I guess I can now say I've been writing for 20 years. So I do. I currently live in Northern Ohio. I am in a little town called Strongsville, about an hour and a half from Amish country in Ohio. And I have two grown children, and we recently adopted a dog named Sophie, and she will probably be wandering around here wondering what I'm doing. So those are the highlights.
I love it. And it's always fun when pets show up in interviews and things like that.
Right.
Um, but we're here in part to celebrate the release of your latest book, Unforgiven. But first off, which number is this? Because you started writing just a little bit before I did. I started writing in 2005. So shockingly enough, coming up on 20 years myself, which is
I
just kind of
know.
stunning to me. But book number 40 is coming out for me in April of 2024. And I think you've written many more books than I have. So what number is Unforgiven for you?
I need to count. Because my daughter is actually the one who counts. I don't, but I know I hit around 120,
That's
maybe
amazing.
sometime last year. So I guess we're like 121, 122, something like that. So
That's incredible. I mean, that is so many stories and characters and locations and ideas to have going through your head. Because people are always like, how did you get to 40? And I'm like, I don't know. But I'm sitting here now going, how did you get to 120 plus?
I don't know either. And it's so funny because I honestly never thought of myself as a writer. Never wanted to be a writer when I was growing up. Never thought I'd get my first book published. And and certainly never thought 20 years later I would still be clicking along. I think I sold my first book in 2000. So it's amazing, and I'm so grateful for it. But the stories just keep coming along, and I've realized that I enjoy writing just for the sake of writing. Sometimes I'm working on a book that I haven't sold. I don't know if I ever will sell. It just gives me it makes me happy. And so I guess that's why you and I still get to do this job that we love. It is just that there's just a part of us that needs to put something on paper that's in our heads.
I love that. And there really is, because there have been a couple of seasons where I was like, I don't know if I'll get another contract. I don't know if there's going to be another story. And so, you kind of hold it loosely in front of God and go, okay, I really hoped for one book. And now, book 40 is coming out, turned book 41 in. And so there are those seasons and those moments where you get to kind of choose or ask God, is this going to keep going or am I done?
Absolutely.
And then there's that next story idea or that next spark, and you're like, okay, I guess I'm not done yet. So how did you get the what if for Unforgiven? Because this is a story of, I'm going to call it unlikely heroes. You've
Right.
got two very broken heroes. The heroine has gone through a horrible journey. The heroes had a very challenging story. And now they're kind of coming together, and it's got layers of, I mean, it's Amish. You've got layers of romance potentially. You've got a layer of suspense. So there's a lot going on in this story. So, what kind of was the genesis moment or that spark that lets you go, this is a story that I'm going to invest the next months into developing and writing and editing and marketing and, just living with?
Well, it goes right back to what we were just saying is sometimes you've just got a story in your head that you feel like needs to be told. And just backing up a little bit, years ago, I was searching for another location to write an Amish romance besides Ohio. And I happened to come across a place called Crittenden County, Kentucky, which, y'all, it's on the southwest portion of Kentucky, right there on the other side of the river from St. Louis. So kind of that gives you an idea. And one day my husband and I just decided to go down there and see what was going on. And it was like nothing I ever imagined. I mean, you're right in a Kentucky holler. I remember vividly, it was pouring down rain. There's creeks everywhere. There's broken down trailers. There's people that have bought houses and made them brick. And then there's on the middle of it all, there's this Amish community, and the signs on the roads were people taking pieces of plywood and with some paint wrote the name of the street and stuck it in the ground. I mean, it looked like something almost like a movie. And so I did. I ended up writing 3 books years ago set in Crittenden County, and it was a kind of a mystery. And as I was again kind of doing what we were talking about, just asking God, thinking about what shall I do, I just was like, you know what? I kind of want to go back there again. And maybe it's because the series I did was set in Pinecraft, and it was all so happy. And I was like, these characters that are kind of struggling are calling my name. And because of that, I know the perfect kind of murky area for them to have this story set. And that is how it all started. I could go on and on. I don't want to drown on too long, but you were in a nutshell, yeah. This story is chock full of people that have just been through the ringer and are struggling, and they're all almost living in isolation, which was a little bit of a challenge to make the community come alive.
Yeah, because you get back in those hollers and those locations, and there's such distance and separation that then to create a sense of community would be a challenge. But when we're coming out of a period where so many people were isolated, thanks to the pandemic, and some people are still struggling to reconnect post that, I think we can learn something from that. So, the ways that we can continue to reach out to people. And so I found it so sweet how the hero just wouldn't let her, the heroine, stay separated. He was like, he was going to just continue to reach out and do things regardless of what she did. And it just was kind of like this little pecking away, saying, I'm here, I see you, I'm going to keep serving you regardless of anything ever happens. And I think there's something too that we can all apply to the people around us who are isolated for whatever reason. So when you think about the book, though, Unforgiven, what is a theme? And it maybe it comes from the title, but like, was there an overarching theme that you had when you started, or when does that come to you in the writing process?
I always start the book, any book I write, with a theme, and I love a title. So I'm sometimes editors, when I will be halfway through a book or so forth, they'll be like, "Oh, we want to come up with title suggestions," and I'm a little snippy about it. I'm like, I have a title. The title is Unforgiven. And they're like, well, we're going to talk about this. And I'm thinking, you can talk about it, but I know the title of this book. And
Yeah.
sometimes I don't win, and they're like, we want to tweak it a little bit, but that is the theme of this novel, not only of forgiveness, but also I had to was like, is this even a word, unforgiveness? But it really, what is that quality? And of course, it all goes down to the grace of God, and he's forgiven all of us, and you need to forgive other people. But also, there was a big part of me in these characters, as far as they had to realize that they have to forgive their own flaws and themselves, which is the hardest, I think, to do. I don't know about some of the listeners that are visiting with us today, but sometimes I overthink something, or I'll second guess something, even if it's like, oh, I should have written this gal a note, and then I'll be like, well, Shelley, you wrote her an email. And then I'll be like, but maybe I should have written a personal note. Like, I think that might mean more. And then I'm like, oh, maybe I should have sent it like right away instead of waiting a week. So sometimes even something so silly and little and insignificant as that, sometimes I'm like, I look at a little hard on myself. But I think, especially on major issues, it is. And if you've known you make a mistake and you wish you could go back in time, but you can't, I think it's sometimes a lot pretty hard to forgive yourself, but you need to.
Yeah, and it's such a hard thing. I think I think it's one of those things that where, I keep coming back to it. I keep seeing this and like, oh, it's so powerful. Are we giving ourselves the same grace we would give to a friend? And
Right.
often we're not. We're
Right.
so quick to do something to other people and then we don't extend that to ourselves. And when I start thinking about it in that frame, I'm like, ooh, why am I so hard on myself? Because I would be so quick with my kids or my best friend or even my husband to be like, no, it's gone, it's forgiven, it's forgotten. But when it comes to me, I'm so hard on myself. And so it's really a challenging thing to do. So
Right.
when you think about this whole writing journey, when did you first know you were going to be a writer? Because earlier you were saying that was never even something you thought about.
It wasn't. I was a school teacher. I taught sixth grade. So I taught that for 11 years. I honestly, my goal when I was teaching was to become a principal. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted I guess, be in charge of a whole school. But I did love teaching. I really love being around these 12-year-olds, but they kind of wore me out. But how I did start writing all these years ago is I used to read during my lunch breaks. And one day I forgot a book. And that is what happened. I decided, well, maybe I should just write my own. And
Mhm.
I started just writing chapter one. And again, I was unsure. I was like, I'm not a writer. I never went to school to become a writing. I never was the girl like in seventh grade where your English teacher pulls you to side and be like, "You're such a good writer. You should do something." That was not me. And so I just really thought but I enjoyed it. And
That's so fun.
and I remembered how much I would boost up my students. Like when
Mhm.
I'd give them a writing assignment and they'd be like, oh, I'm not doing very well, or I don't understand, or this isn't very good. And I would say, yes, it is. And look how you've come up with something, and you can always change and make it better. So it's again just kind of the same thing, I guess, is that we've been
Yeah.
discussing is I gave myself a little burst of confidence that I've been trying to give other people. The main thing is I just found I liked it.
Mhm.
I started writing like some people might take up running or baking or knitting. Like it was my new hobby. It was my new fun Shelley hobby. And then my husband finally was like, you've written quite a bit. Maybe you should let someone else see this.
I love that. My
Yeah.
husband was the one who gave me a push too. And so who did you let see it first?
Well, not him. Honestly, believe it or not, the first thing I did is there used to be this magazine. I think it was called Romantic Times, and you could pay
Oh
some
yeah.
to read a sample. And like it was one of these ads in the back of the book, and who even knows? Like it could have just been like some intern there, like this is the way they're making $50 or something. But I sent my first 100 pages I ever wrote, and because I was too shy to even show it to someone in person. I mean that is funny. And I got back all this critique, and this person, I don't know if it was a man or a woman, really did say, yeah, you can write. Eventually I went to a writing group in Cincinnati where we lived at the time. My husband also encouraged me to do that. And I met some authors who had been published. And I remember vividly, I was standing in line to get a book signed of the person who had been speaking. And when I finally got to my turn, she said, Shelley, what do you write? And it was like the first time somebody had asked me that, like, and she was just staring at me like, you're in a writing community, you're
You got to
here,
write something.
you obviously are a writer. And then I was like, I like writing romances. And she's like, great, I do too. And then that's kind of where it started. So
Oh,
kind of almost kicking and screaming. And I'm the accidental writer, I guess. Yeah.
I love that. And look at you, 120 books later.
I know it. I know it. I just, yeah, it's just like we say, you just never know what God has in store for you or what's in your future. I mean,
Yeah,
back when I was surrounded by 12-year-olds, if somebody said, "Oh yeah, in 2024 you're going to be doing this," I would have just been like, "Yeah, right."
you're
I'm
so
so
cute.
I'm so grateful, I'm grateful. I'm grateful we don't always know what's in store for us. The surprises are great, are wonderful.
Absolutely. And I also think that if we did know, most of us would run screaming the other direction.
Absolutely. If somebody would have said, "Oh yeah, you're going to get to do these interviews on video," yeah, right. So you
Yeah,
just, it's awesome. It's I always tell people, I have the best job, and I'm
yeah.
so I get to make up stories and talk about them.
So what's one of your greatest challenges as an author?
I think you kind of mentioned it when we were talking of just getting started, and really it's just keep going and to find the inspiration and to keep going through these writing peaks and valleys. What sometimes someone might not realize when a published writer who publishes for a house, you write according to contracts, and it's a waiting game. And
Yeah,
sometimes you finish up a contract and you make up some more story ideas and you send them in. I send them to my agent. She sends them to the publishing house, and then you wait. And
yeah,
then even after all these books, I still get that knot in my stomach. And I'm still like,
yeah.
I carry around my phone, like, sure, like I'm going to get a phone call today or that email or whatever. I get just as nervous, like, oh, I bet they hated it. Maybe they'll
Yeah.
like it. Um, and sometimes I don't get good news. I mean, even
Mhm.
after all this time, I'll come up with a series and I think it's great. Like, I think, oh, everyone's going to really like this, and nobody wants to read about that. And then and that's a challenge too. Is I learned this years ago, but I sometimes have to remind me that it's not personal. Sometimes I make up a book or an idea, and just because someone says it's not for them doesn't mean like they don't like me as a person. They just
Yeah.
care for the book or the book idea. And that reminder, I think, gets us through when we might get a bad review or we might get a cranky reader or you name it. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't always win everything, and that's perfectly fine. That's good.
Yeah. But it's definitely a challenge. So what brings you joy? Why do you keep doing it? Because 120 bucks, 20 some years. Why keep doing it? So what brings you joy in the process?
I love a first draft. I have to
Mm.
say, I love the freedom of making tons of mistakes. My first draft manuscripts are full of misspelled words. Just I full of like two-sentence paragraphs. They're a mess. And I can't remember a detail to save my soul. So everyone has all the different eye colors. They're
Yeah.
standing, they're sitting, they're in the park. No, they're on the living room. Uh, but I love the joy of getting to know a person I made up and having it just they all of a sudden there's a moment and I feel like they're my new next door neighbors. Like I know them that well, and especially maybe there's another moment too. I can just see it. It's around page 300, 320 for me, and all of a sudden I'm like, I like these people, and and it's clicking, and I know them, and I think someone else might like them too, and I know they're finally gonna I'm gonna stop torturing them, and they're gonna have a good happy ending forever after. That's a nice moment too.
Yeah.
So it really is for me. Sometimes people say, "Oh, it must be getting on a bestseller list, or it must be seeing your book on a bookshelf in a store." A lot of that is neat, but really, for me, it always goes back to why I started. There is something about putting an item to a paper. It just makes me happy, and I live for that moment, because not every day is like that. Some days I write stuff and I'm like, I hate it all, but some days are good.
Yeah, and there are those moments where I'm like, this is terrible. Nobody's going to like it. The editor's going to realize they made a mistake. And then it usually for me, it's somewhere on the second read through where I go, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought it was. But there's usually in that murky middle, I'm just like, this is garbage. I hate everything about it. Why did I think this was a good idea? And then, yeah, towards the end, I'm like, oh, this isn't so bad. But there's just that
Oh,
part in
oh,
the middle.
Carrie, sometimes I'm like, I'll come upstairs and my husband's like, "How are you going?" And I'm like, "I hate everyone in my book. I don't think they deserve to be in a book."
Yeah, they don't deserve a happily ever
I know. I'm
after.
like, I don't know why I thought I wanted to spend the next, 3 months writing about this person. I didn't think so. And then all of a sudden I like them again. But you're
Yeah.
right. It is. It's always those moments.
So, if you could have one of your books made into a movie, is there one that just would be magic on the big screen?
You for listeners might not know, but Kara is so kind to give us some questions ahead of time.
Mhm.
So like we're not just in like deer in headlights. So anyway, this was one of the questions, and usually I don't watch a lot of movies, so I don't always think about that. But I did think about this question, and I have to say, not just because I'm promoting this book, but I really do think this Unforgiven would be a dynamite movie, and that's because the setting is so different. So many. I have written a whole variety of books, but I just love the idea of an Amish setting, which is so different from the pristine, perfect Amish farm someone might come across in Ohio or Pennsylvania or Indiana. It's just different there. That said, I wrote a Western a long time ago, probably, I don't know, 2010 to 2011, maybe 29. Anyway, and it was called A Texan's Promise, and it was a Western set right after the Civil War, and they're going
Mm.
across the country, and I always thought that would be fun. I watched Westerns with my dad, and so I had always thought it would be fun to have one of those Westerns I wrote become a movie.
That would be fun. And those are so cinematic, just with the
Yeah, right.
big landscape and the horses and all of
Oh,
that.
I know it. I love it. Everybody in these dusters and the yeah,
Yeah.
I could just go on and on. It's and those are for me a very fun place to be for sure in my mind.
Yeah. Okay, so a few quick questions before we wrap up.
Yes, ma'am.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee always.
Straight coffee, or do you like the lattes and macchiatos?
If I'm like out and about, I might do that. But I just like coffee. But unfortunately, I wish I could drink my coffee black, but I am putting in sugar. I am putting in milk. I'm finding some creamer somebody tells me about. I got to try that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I drink a lot of it, and then I drink a lot of hot water. When I was teaching school, one of the
Mm.
teachers, we realized we were drinking too much coffee. Like maybe it wasn't the sixth graders that were on edge, it was us. And so we kind of switched to start having a coffee pot full of hot water. So I drink an awful lot of hot water.
Oh, that's a fun twist on it. Because I
Yeah,
do coffee and then water is pretty much what I do.
right.
Salty or sweet?
Sweet. I have a terrible sweet tooth, and I love to bake too. So,
Mm.
yeah, I wish I craved like celery. That would be a good thing.
Yeah, I don't think very many people crave celery.
No.
not much. And then how do you celebrate when you reach the end of a book?
I usually it's a relief. I have a terrible habit of saying no. I always write more than one book at a time, which is kind of an unusual trait for a writer, I think. So, um, because of that, sometimes my deadlines are pretty close. So
Mhm.
I love turning a book in time. I love turning in a book on time. I rarely
Yeah.
turn a book in early, like even a day early. Like I'm always like, I got to get it done.
Yeah.
I always feel relief. That's the main
Mhm.
celebration thing. But this is my embarrassing trait is sometimes I've turned in a book at 10 in the morning and I've made it online. I'll feel relief. I'll go upstairs. Maybe I'll have lunch. Maybe I'll take the dog for a walk. And then I'll be like, what should I do now? Well, I guess I'll go work on this other book that's due in 2 months and I'll go back and write. And so
Yeah.
I wish I wish sometimes I had a more exciting, I don't
Yeah.
know, varied
I
interest.
think
Have you,
I
please
think most
tell
of us are
me,
that way.
have you done that too, Kara? Like you're like,
Oh, all
oh
the
yeah,
time. I
yeah.
am terrible about celebrating. In fact, I was emailing one of my students a couple days ago because he's a student athlete and had gotten recognized with the Big Ten award. And I emailed him, I'm like, from one achiever to another, take time to celebrate because I know you're focused on the Big Ten tourney. I know you're focused on the NCAA tourney, but learn now because I'm still trying to figure out how to stop, celebrate, and then move on. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I know exactly. So don't make that mistake. Cause I just am like, oh, check on to the next thing. And I think
Right.
a lot of us are that way because we're like, well, okay. And especially I think the more books we write, the more we're like, all right, on to the next. And there's something to stopping and celebrating. And so it's been sweet because my husband's starting to figure that out. And so he's gotten me like in the last couple of weeks because I turned a book in and then I had my next book actually show up at the door. And so I got cards for both. And I was like, oh, because there's been years there was no
Oh,
recognition that
oh
anything
no.
happened. And so I was like, oh, we're both getting it. Yay.
Yeah, no,
So
I need to do that. That would be a good goal for the year
yeah,
or one time just to stop. And it's true. When my husband does something, I'm like, we should celebrate. And he kind of looks at me like, why?
yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah,
think it's that, good Protestant work ethic. We're like, okay,
right,
check on to the next. But
right. I know. Yeah. So, yeah, I bet you get some great stories about people celebrating. So
yeah,
hopefully next time we talk, I will
yeah.
have it'll be a new thing that Shelley does. Great.
Yeah. Well, if not, I'm just trying to get inspiration. So,
Right, right.
well, thank you so much for joining me. It's always so fun to see you. And Unforgiven is available everywhere that books are sold. And if you love books that combine a lot of really great genres. So a little bit of romance, some suspense, Amish. It's all woven together in such a beautiful way. I can't recommend Unforgiven enough. And Shelley's a gifted writer, so definitely be sure to check out her books wherever you like to buy books. So Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, independent bookstores, any of the places you can find her books. Thanks again for joining me, Shelley.
Thank you, Kara. This was such a treat. I really appreciate it. And have a great day.
Thanks.